Why does stopping alcohol for just 2 weeks change the body in ways most people never expect? Most people assume a short break from alcohol means slightly better sleep and maybe a bit more energy. But inside the body, something more significant is happening. Multiple systems begin shifting within days, and by the end of week 2, the changes are no longer subtle. Understanding what happens during those 14 days reveals how deeply alcohol affects normal function and what the body can do when that signal is removed. In the first few days without alcohol, the body begins adjusting. Sleep starts to shift. Energy becomes more stable. The liver gets a break from its primary detox workload. But something changes around day 7. The early adjustments stop happening in isolation and start compounding. Multiple systems begin improving at the same time. By day 14, the body isn't just recovering, it's operating differently. And that's where most people get surprised. Here's the first question worth asking. Why do so many people report waking up feeling genuinely rested after 2 weeks without alcohol, even if they were already sleeping 8 hours a night? Alcohol disrupts two of the most critical phases of sleep, REM sleep and deep slow-wave sleep. REM sleep is when the brain consolidates memory and regulates emotion. Deep sleep is when the body repairs tissue, balances hormones, and resets the nervous system. Alcohol suppresses both. It fragments sleep architecture, meaning the body cycles through sleep stages incorrectly, spending less time in the phases that actually restore function. Someone sleeping 8 hours with regular alcohol use may be getting far less biological recovery than those hours suggest. By week 2 without alcohol, sleep cycles begin to normalize. REM returns to its natural timing. Deep sleep becomes more consistent. The sleep isn't just longer, it's structurally working again. And that difference in cognitive clarity, mood, and energy is something the body starts making visible. But sleep isn't the only system recalibrating. There's something happening in the brain itself, and it explains why mood and mental clarity often feel unstable in the first week, then noticeably better by week 2. Alcohol alters brain chemistry in 2 primary ways. It increases GABA, a neurotransmitter that slows brain activity and creates sedation, and it suppresses glutamate, the neurotransmitter responsible for alertness and cognitive function. With regular alcohol use, the brain adapts to that altered chemical environment. It begins compensating by downregulating GABA sensitivity and increasing glutamate activity to maintain balance. When alcohol is removed, that compensation doesn't disappear immediately. The brain is temporarily running its adapted chemistry without the substance it adapted to. The result? Lower mood, reduced motivation, and mental fog, especially in days 1 through 5. By around 2 weeks, the brain begins recalibrating toward its natural baseline. Neurotransmitter levels stabilize. Mental clarity returns. Mood becomes more consistent. The brain no longer needs a chemical input to feel normal, because it's starting to generate that stability on its own again. Energy also begins changing more noticeably by week 2. And the reason isn't what most people assume. When alcohol is consumed, the body treats it as a priority fuel, metabolizing it before fat, glucose, or anything else. This disrupts normal energy regulation in 2 key ways. First, fat metabolism slows significantly. The body isn't burning fat efficiently because it's busy processing alcohol. Second, blood sugar becomes less stable. Alcohol interferes with glucose regulation, leading to energy crashes, increased hunger, and cravings, particularly for sugar and carbohydrates. After 2 weeks without alcohol, both patterns begin to reverse. Fat metabolism resumes normally. Blood sugar regulation improves. Energy levels stabilize across the day instead of spiking and crashing. The cravings that many people experience for sugar, for snacks, for alcohol itself, often decrease not because of willpower, but because the metabolic disruption causing them has been removed. Inside the body, something quieter is also happening, and it matters more than most people realize. The liver is responsible for filtering the bloodstream, processing nutrients, regulating hormones, and producing proteins the body depends on. When alcohol is present, the liver deprioritizes all of those functions to handle detoxification first. Chronic alcohol use, even at moderate levels, leads to fat accumulation in liver cells and low-grade inflammation of liver tissue. Neither of these is immediately visible or painful, but both interfere with the liver's ability to perform its full range of functions. By the second week without alcohol, early signs of recovery begin appearing. Liver inflammation starts to decrease. Fat accumulation begins to reverse. The liver isn't being diverted anymore. It's returning to its normal role, and the downstream effects of that recovery show up in energy, hormone balance, and how efficiently the body processes what it eats. There's one more change happening in the background, one that connects everything else. Alcohol promotes low-grade systemic inflammation. This isn't inflammation that causes obvious pain. It's a chronic, quiet elevation of inflammatory markers throughout the body that affects recovery, immune function, cellular repair, and long-term health. Research consistently shows that regular alcohol consumption raises C-reactive protein and other inflammatory markers even at levels most people consider moderate. By 2 weeks without alcohol, those markers begin declining. The body's recovery systems operate more efficiently. Muscles repair faster after exercise. Sleep-based restoration improves. And this is where the changes from sleep, brain chemistry, metabolism, and liver function start connecting, because inflammation is the common thread running through all of them. So what does this mean for the longer picture? 2 weeks is early, but the changes happening at this point aren't cosmetic. They represent a measurable biological shift, and they reveal something important about how the body responds to what it's repeatedly exposed to. Sleep architecture improves because the brain is no longer suppressing its own recovery cycles. Mood stabilizes because neurotransmitter balance is returning. Energy becomes consistent because metabolic function is no longer being interrupted. The liver begins recovering because it's no longer in constant detoxification mode. None of these changes required anything new to be added. They happened because something interfering with normal function was removed. This is one of the clearest examples in biology of what researchers call a removal effect, the body's capacity to restore baseline function when a disrupting input stops. It doesn't apply only to alcohol, but alcohol produces some of the most measurable and rapid examples of this effect. After 2 weeks without alcohol, the body doesn't just feel different, it's operating differently. The disruptions that were quietly running in the background, in sleep, in brain chemistry, in metabolism, in the liver, in inflammation levels, begin unwinding on a timeline most people don't expect. Because in human biology, the body is constantly responding to what it's given. Remove the signal, and the system doesn't just recover, it resets.